Alright, what's going on, guys? This is Maneliki, and welcome to the second episode in my Stellaris tutorial series. This time around, we'll be talking about your first few years in the game. So you've set up, you've had a look at your interface. What the heck do you do now? Okay, well, before we unpause the game, let's have a look around the map. So you can hit E or whatever and have a look at the galaxy view. And just kind of pan around a little bit and look at the map and just kind of get an idea of where you're at, where everybody else is. Now, chances are you're not going to be seeing any of the other races just yet because you're not likely to have spawned that close to anybody unless you're playing on a smaller galaxy with clusters or you're playing multiplayer or something. But chances are you're not going to see anybody. But just get an idea of where you are, kind of look at what resources you want to go after real quick, and just kind of have a look around and see where you're at. The next thing you probably want to do is have a look at your policies and make sure that they're in line with how you want to play. So just go up to your policies and edicts screen and just click around in there and make sure there's nothing out of place. Now, quite often those are, well, they're very in line with the ethics you've picked and the and things like that when you're creating your race. But you may want to change some of them depending on how you want to play. So just have a quick look through that list and make sure that everything is the way you'd want it to be. Next thing, you're going to want to set your research. So just click on one of those research alerts up in the top left there, and it's going to bring you to the research screen. Now, as we've talked about before, there's three different types of research. So you have your society, your engineering, and your physics. So you're going to want to pick a research project for each one of these different types of research. Now, you're going to get random researches, but generally the game will give you science labs for each one of these different types of research. It's not a bad idea to take those. You don't have to. You can take whatever you want. You don't have to pick the colonization research anymore. The game starts you with that. So if you want to colonize right away, you don't have to wait or hold out or anything like that for the colony research. You already have it. So just pick whatever you think might be good. In the early stages of the game, it's hard to go wrong with researching the different science labs because they will in turn further boost your research. So that's always a good idea, but you can pretty much get away with whatever you want depending on just how you want to play. Now, in addition to the three categories of research, there's also different types of research projects. There's the normal ones that you start out with. You can also find rare research, and as you can imagine, it has a rarer chance of spawning into your different picks of the researches you can research at any given point. That's going to be denoted by a purple background on the research project. Now, quite often these rare research cards are pretty powerful, but they may or may not pertain necessarily to what you're trying to go for at the current time. But the thing is, they are rare, so before you dismiss them, you may want to consider just the fact that they're not likely to really show up in your research tree again for a while. So just kind of bear that in mind before you click them away. Now, there's another type of research you can get through doing little quests and side missions, I guess, throughout the galaxy. These are called unique techs, and these are going to be denoted by a kind of golden yellowish border surrounding the tech card. So the way you get these is you'll find sort of creatures, or you'll find weird research projects or whatever throughout the galaxy. And once you complete them or kill them or research them or whatever you got to do, you'll gain access and you'll unlock this particular unique technology. Now, these technologies will remain in your tech choices no matter what. So they will not go away. They will always be there, available to research, given within the proper category. So you don't have to worry about researching them right away if you don't want to. Nearing the mid-late game, you're also going to find a type of technology called dangerous technology. And these are denoted by red backgrounds on the technology card. The reason these are called dangerous is because once you complete them, they kind of unlock the possibility for something really, really horrible to go wrong. And I don't want to spoil all that in this video, but just keep in mind, if you research something that's red and dangerous, down the line something really, really bad could possibly go wrong. So just keep that in mind before you click on those techs. Now, each research project has its own sort of research point cost, of course, associated with it. It's just a raw number saying how many points over time it's going to take to complete this tech. So once you click on the technology, you can sort of see it in your list there, and you can hover over it. It'll show you how many months it's going to take to complete. This is based on how many points it costs, how many points you're generating per month, and any modifiers that you might have, such as the skill of the scientist or any Empire unique modifiers that you've got going on right now that are boosting your research, or maybe some of your edicts or some of your civics or your traits or whatever that are contributing to research. All these factors go into play on how fast you're researching this particular technology. Of course, you can increase this with more science labs and things like that. Later in the game, you can also set your science ships to assist research, which is always helpful when they have nothing else to do. You can set them to assist research on your planets, and they'll speed things up a bit too. So the next thing you probably want to do before we unpause the game is queue up some actions for your ships. So as you can see, you've started with a science ship and a construction ship. The first thing you want to do is start surveying. So go ahead and click on your science ship, and then what you can do is you can right click on your home star and click survey system. He's going to fly around your home system and survey all the different planets and objects found in there. You can also right click on a star from the galaxy view to do basically the same thing. Now as you survey things, you're going to uncover resources as well as research projects. Now your scientist may or may not be higher level enough to research these research projects just yet. If he is, go ahead and do it, it's a good idea. If not, just leave it for now. The game's going to give you a small little % chance of failure. My threshold that I use is 20%. If it's over 20% failure, I don't touch it. Under that, you can probably go ahead and go for it. You're also going to find resources. So once you've uncovered a resource on a planet or a little celestial body or whatever it is, you can have your construction ship right click on that and say, build mining station or research station or whatever, and you're going to then go ahead and harness that resource. So once you've got a whole bunch of things surveyed, you can send your construction ship out, start harnessing resources, and get that economy going. And everybody's got their own sort of take on this, but personally I would prioritize the mineral resources at first, and then take energy resources as a way of balancing out the energy maintenance cost for those mineral stations. So go after as many minerals as you can in the early game, and just take energy to be able to support your minerals. And then once you've got a healthy mineral income, then go ahead and grab the research and whatever else you find out there. I'd also personally recommend that you'd probably want to build a few extra science ships, and don't forget you do need to assign scientists to all of them in order to get them to survey and research things, and a few extra construction ships too, because you really want to get that expansion and exploration and resource harnessing thing down, because if you don't, the AI is going to overwhelm you, or a skilled player will overwhelm you as well. So you definitely want to get that get fleshing out, get branching out, and make sure you explore your surroundings quickly and harness resources very quickly. Now you'll notice that you can't build anything outside of your empire's borders. Now while these borders will grow as you colonize new planets and grow in population, there's some areas that you're not able to reach quick enough because they're a little bit too far out of reach. If you want to harness some nice resources in there, you're kind of out of luck. But what you can do is you can build what's called a frontier outpost. So you can send your construction ship, and if there's a nice little patch of resources or whatever you want to get at, you can right click on the star in that system and say build frontier outpost. This is going to cost some influence as well as the usual mineral cost, and it's also going to cost a little bit of influence each month to upkeep. But what that's going to do is it's going to create a bubble of your empire's influence out in space. So that's going to allow you to then construct mining stations, research stations, or whatever out in that pocket of space while you wait for the rest of your empire to sort of envelop it. It's a really great way of harnessing resources in the early game. You can also use it offensively. If another empire nearby is kind of threatening to out-expand you, you can actually use these frontier outposts as a containment. You can kind of build one close to their territory, and so the influence bubble grows a bit, and that'll sort of stop them from expanding too aggressively. But that's kind of a semi-advanced tactic. I wouldn't worry too much about that for the time being, but they're a really great way in the early game to make sure you can secure those much-needed resources. Alright, well, we've finally reached the point where we can unpause the game, let it run for a little bit. Your science ship's going to go off and do his thing, and your construction ship's going to go off and do his thing. In the meantime, what do? Well, might be a good time to start looking at managing your population. So in Stellaris, and similarly, kind of like Vicky 2, you have the thing called POPs. And POPs are just kind of a grouping of population that kind of represent, well, a similar group of population. So basically, if you click on your planet, there's going to be a few tabs down there at the bottom. Click on the Surface tab. That's going to show you kind of a visual representation of what's going on the surface of your planet. And you see there's going to be little characters of your species there, your race, little POPs as they're called. Now each one of these pops can be standing on a particular tile. Now, depending on the size of your homeworld, there'll be more tiles or less tiles. And some of these tiles are going to have resources on them. Some of them will have tile blockers, which means you can't build anything on them. So you can click and drag those pops around your planet all you like. Now you'll notice they're only actually harvesting the resources that they're standing on. You need a pop on top of a resource in order to harness it. So go ahead and rearrange those in any way you like. However, in the very early game, you may want to think about putting them on food tiles if you can, because you want to stockpile food in the early game because you don't want to starve. And also, once you hit your cap, you're going to start putting that food towards extra pop growth, and you do want your population to grow quickly. More pops means more resources harnessed, and so on. So I would argue put them on the food tiles if you can. The game will probably default to that anyway, but you may want to sort of prioritize food on your planets at the start of the game. Now, depending on the policies that you set, you can also move pops in between planets. This is called resettlement, and it costs a little bit of influence points. This can be a pretty good thing to do if you just colonize a new planet and you want to grow its population really quickly. You can just resettle from an already populated planet. Now, when you right-click on a pop, you can also set the rights for that particular species of pop. If you have multiple species in your empire, you can give them all separate rights and living conditions. So if you right-click on that, you can say Set Rights. That's going to bring you to a screen where you can tinker with the various rights and freedoms of that particular type of pop. So, you know, if you're playing a really mean empire and you want to purge a particular type of pop, you can set that. You know, if you want to set it as food, you can have your other pops eat it, or if you want to give it a nice lavish lifestyle, whatever you want to do, however you want to treat that pop, you can totally do that. Now, as you begin to explore the planets and star systems around you, not only are you going to bump into AI empires vying for control of the galaxy, but you're also going to find other civilizations. Some of them are primitives, which means they haven't yet reached FTL capability and they are quite defenseless. You can invade them if you like. You can uplift them to, you know, if they're pre-sentient, if they're basically just animals, you can uplift them to sentience. You can technologically enlighten them to bring them up to FTL status and actually make them a space empire, and they'll love you for it. You can also invade their planet, take it for yourself, and enslave them if you like. You might also meet space creatures as you expand. You might find nests of space creatures which you can attack or leave alone or research if you like. You might find wandering space creatures. These are good for research. If you attack them, you can get bonuses. If you decide to study them from afar, you can get bonuses that way too. You're also going to run into space pirates eventually. Now, space pirates are kind of an offshoot of your own race, and they'll kind of rebel against you. They're not an actual empire. They just have a little space station somewhere nearby, and they'll continually harass your stations and your outposts and things. They'll just generally be annoying. They're not very strong. Now, occasionally you'll find like a pirate base. That's going to be a little bit stronger. It's going to require a little more effort to take down, but you can certainly do it. Also, depending on the settings you've picked for your game, you may or may not run into fallen empires. These are extraordinarily powerful civilizations. They're ancient civilizations that have been around the whole time. They've watched the galaxy grow and everything, and they've seen you evolve from little primitive little idiots up to FTL capable civilizations. They're very, very strong. Now, they generally just kind of sit in their corner and don't do anything. Your best bet's probably just to leave them alone for the time being. In the later phases of the game, you can fight them, but for the most part, you'll probably want to leave them alone. Don't go into their space. They don't like that. Now, they can occasionally awaken, which means they've decided to stop being passive and they decide to take a more active role in what's going on in the galaxy. So they kind of wake up and start producing more ships, at which point they become even more powerful. And then they start declaring wars and, asserting their will. Now, of course, the galactic sort of political situation and your own fleet strength will sort of dictate how you want to respond to these guys when they contact you with their demands, if any. But until you're really, really, really powerful, the general rule of thumb is just be nice to these guys. So you've been exploring, you've been surveying, you've been building mining stations and research stations, and you've come across a habitable planet. What do? Well, you probably want to colonize it. So how do you do that? Well, The game starts you off with colony tech. It didn't used to, but it does now as of a few patches ago. So you can build a colony ship pretty much right away. That's going to cost a little bit of resources, 300 some resources. It's a little bit expensive, but it's absolutely worth it. If you can find a nice big planet that's of the same habitable zone as you may want to consider colonizing it. Now when I say big planet, I'm thinking something like anything, 14, 15 or larger in terms of planet size. The larger the planet, the more population can fit on it, and therefore the more productive it's going to be. So to get this thing colonized, first thing you want to do is go to your spaceport on your home planet, and then you want to build a colony ship. That's going to take a little bit of time, and once it's built, you can click the colony ship and then right-click on the planet that you want to colonize and then say colonize. Alternatively, you can just click on the planet and go to the surface tab or the summary tab, and there'll be a button that says colonize. You can click it from there, and then you're going to want to place your landing site. So you're going to get this little icon of a ship, and you just kind of click it where you want to place your main sort of colony on that planet to start off with. Now it does kind of matter where you click here, because what's going to happen is any tile adjacent to that landing site is going to get a bonus to its resource output. And when I say adjacent in Stellaris, it's literally up, down, left, right. There's no diagonal adjacency, but any tile up or left or right or down from where you land is going to get a resource bonus. So keep that in mind when you land a colony. So as you can imagine, a decent idea would be to land in the middle of a bunch of food tiles or whatever, and that way you can grow your population faster. It's not really necessary in the early game, but you can also colonize using the expansion planner, which is up in the little menus up at the top there. And you can just basically sort through all the lists of different habitable planets within your borders, and you can colonize from there. It's a really neat, nifty tool to use, but not super necessary in the early game when you've only got a couple planets laying around anyway. One thing to bear in mind is that colonizing planets costs influence dependent on how far the planet is away from your current territory. I think it's a default of 30. It costs at least 30, and the farther away the planet is, the more it's going to cost. There's unity perks or traditions or whatever to mitigate this cost a bit, but generally the farther away it is, the more it's going to cost to colonize. So if you have your eyes set on a planet that's kind of far away, you may want to start banking influence to prepare for that. Well, I think that's just about all I wanted to cover in this video. I hope you guys found it helpful. Do stay tuned for the next video in this series where we're going to be talking about the mid-game. But until then, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.